Today's daf is daf Beis. We begin Megilla Nikres, and the Mishnah says Biyud Aleph, Biyud Beis, Biyud Gimel, Biyud Dalet, B'Tesvav. These are the days in Adar in which we read the Megillah. And we're going to divide this up and calculate when these days will generate a Chiyuv Megillah. Krachim Hamukafim Chomo Mimos Yoshua ben Nun Korim B'Tesvav. So we have a Krach. A Krach is a major city that's walled, and it was walled already at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, way before Achashverosh. They read on the 15th, but Yoros Dolos Karim B'Yudal. Now I skipped the word Kfarim deliberately. Let's talk about Yoros Gedolos. These are called the Prozim. These are the unwalled, open cities. They read on the 14th. In the case of Kfarim, which are smaller towns or villages, it really depends. They will read the Megillah earlier, or perhaps even later, and that's called the Yom HaKnisa. We'll see if there's any possibility of they're reading it later, but the simple shot is they read it earlier. Ketzad, why and when do they read it earlier? It all depends on what day of the week was the 14th of Adar. Lios Yudal B'Sheni. We can have a case where both the Kfarim as well as the Ayoros will read together the Megillah on the 14th. And that's in a case where the 14th is on a Monday. We'll see the same halacha if the 14th falls on a Thursday. Again, Mukafos Choma L'Mocher. They'll always read it on the 15th, which will be in this case on a Tuesday. And there's no problem, there's no reason why the Kfarim shouldn't be integrated together with the Ayoros to read it on the 14th. But Chal Lios B'Shlisha B'Revi, if Yudalet B'Nisan is on Yom Gimel, Yom Dalet in the Shavua, then Kfarim Makdimim L'Yom HaKnisa. The members of the villages will read their Megillah earlier, because that's called Yom HaKnisa. And these are the days in which the Bnei HaKfarim come into the largest cities, and they come in anyway. They come in either to hear the Torah reading, or maybe there's a shuk, there's a marketplace, they bring their merchandise to sell. And we'll see later that they will supply water and food from the agricultural areas into the big cities. So for example, if Yudal is on Tuesday, then they will read the Megillah on Monday, which would be Yud Gimel. If, on the other hand, Yudal B'Nisan is on a Wednesday, then they'll be marked by 2 days to Monday, and they will read on Yud Beis. We haven't yet got to a scenario where they read on Yud Aleph. Ayoros Gedolos Karim Bayom. They'll read on the 14th. That's set in stone. That's also set in stone. The Mukafos, walled cities, will read on the 15th. Alios Bechamishi, that's a simple case. Both the villagers, together with the big cities, will read it on the 14th. And on Friday, in this case, which is the 15th, that's when the Mukafos Choma will read the Megillah. Now, where do we get the case of Yud Aleph? Al Lios Erev Shabbos. The 14th falls on Friday. Kfarim Akdim Liyom HaKnisa. Okay, fine. So then the Kfarim could read on the 13th, namely on Thursday. We still haven't gotten to Yud Aleph because they're reading on Yud Gimel. Ayoros Gedolos Mukafos Choma Korim Bo Bayom. Now here, since the Krachim, the largest cities cannot read on Shabbos, and that's called Gzeira D'Rabba. We don't allow reading the Megillah on Shabbos. They'll have to be mocked in the Megillah 1 day earlier. They'll have to read in this case on the 14th, together with the Ayoros Gedolos. Okay. Now, Chalios b'Shabbos. The 14th is now on Shabbos. No one could read the Megillah on the 14th. Kfarim va'ayoros gedolos makdimim v'korim liyom ha'knisa. The large cities, together with the ayoros gedolos, will all read on Thursday. So this is really interesting because in this case, Thursday is the 12th. Let's just calculate, right? If the 14th is Shabbos, then Thursday is the 12th. Interesting. But until now, we had Kedim of one day with regard to the Mukafos Chom, but now we have a Kedim of 2 days with regard to the Ayoros. And they'll read it together with the Bnei Akfarim on that Thursday, which is Yom HaKnisa. So that makes sense that the Kfarim will read it on that day. And as far as the Ayoros are concerned, we have to see why are they reading it on a Thursday, on the 12th. Why not be makbid just simply one day and let them read it on Friday, which would be the 13th. It's a little closer to the 14th. But perhaps we want to, in this case, integrate as many Jews as possible into one entity, into one kriya. They'll read it on Sunday, and that has to do with what we call here in Eretz Yisrael, Purim Mishulash, but we'll talk about that at another occasion. Now, what do we do in the case where the 14th is on a Sunday? And the Mishnah says, so it seems that the hardcore rule is that there's always going to be kedim. And that means, in this case, they're going to read it on Thursday. Now, from Sunday going backwards, Sunday the 14th going backwards to Thursday, we're going to end up on the 11th of Adar. This is the earliest time that we ever find Kriyas HaMegillah. And the big cities, unwalled cities, will read on that Sunday. That's the 14th. And the Krachim that are walled cities will read it on the 15th. The Gemara asks the following. Megillah Nikreis Biyom Biyud Aleph. We said that in the last case where Purim of Yudalit falls on a Sunday, we're going to allow the Bnei Akfarim to read it as early as Yud Aleph. How do we know these various dates? I mean, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel. So the Gemara says, Minon, what kind of question you ask? We're going to have a Gemara later on, and this is the Gemara on Daf Dalet. That Chacham Nikiu al Akfarim Lios Makdimim Liyom HaKnisa. That Chachamim had a vested interest in allowing the villagers, the small villages, to read the Megillah early. And why? They would be able to bring in water and food for the Sudas Purim of those who live in the Krachim. Now, what does this mean? What happens is that those who live in the Kfarim, as a general rule, will provide provisions for areas around them in close proximity. Now, if we're going to require that the Bnei HaKfar read the Megillah on the 14th, they're going to be preoccupied with the Megillah, and they won't have ample time to supply food for other townspeople who want to celebrate a festive Sudas Purim. So therefore, you could have chosen any other possible date that's earlier than the 14th to allow for the Kfarim to be free on the 14th to provide food and drink for the other townspeople, but we wanted it to be on a Monday or a Thursday because that's the Yom HaKnis. Then they're coming in anyway from the various villages into the cities. Now, there are going to be occasions, as we saw in our Mishnah, where both the Kfarim and the Ayoros are reading it on the same day. But in most cases, the Bnei Akfarim are going to read it in advance, which frees them up on the day of Purim. So in any event, based on this Gemara later on, Chacham Mikilu al Kfarim, we know that there were earlier days for the reading of Megillah. So what exactly was bothering the Gemara? And the Gemara answers, Hanan Hachi Kamri. This is what we were asking. Michli Kuli Anshe Knes HaGadol Tekminu. All the days for the reading of Megillah were established by the Anshe Knes HaGadol. Anshe Knes HaGadol Yudal V'Tesvavti. Are you going to tell me that they only established the days of the 14th and the 15th? Could it be that our Mishnah would be okay, the original Takana, which was to read exclusively on those 2 dates, on the 14th and the 15th? That's against a principle that's formulated in Masechet Edios. Ein bezdin yochel levatel derei bezdin chavero elen kein gadol mimenu b'chachma b'minyan. So later bezdin cannot overturn a decision of an earlier bezdin unless it's greater in both chachma, in wisdom, and in minyan, in numbers. And once the Anshe Knes HaGadol had instituted, according to this Havamina, the days of the 14th and the 15th as the exclusive singled out days for Kriyas HaMegillah, there was never a bezdin that was greater than the Anshe Knes HaGadol in Jewish history. El Pshita de Kulo, Anshe Knes HaGadol, we have no other possibility than to assume that all the days mentioned in that Mishnah were established already at the time of the Anshe Knes HaGadol. So we already have readings on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th Adar, based on the Takana of Anshe Knes HaGadol. Heichi Ramiz. Where is that alluded to in the Megillah? And it's not enough to tell me that, Chachami Kilu al Kfarim. You could be making on the Kfarim, but you can't go against the Megillah itself. The Megillah itself says that the reading of the Megillah has to take place Hayom Elu Nizkarim on the 14th, the 15th. So how could they override the Megillah unless they found a source in the Megillah that indicates that there were other days that were potential for Kriyas HaMegillah? Omer Rav Shemen bar Av, Omer Rav Yochanan, Omer Kra, L'kayim es yimei HaPurim ha'ela bizmaneihem. This is a pasuk in the 9th chapter of Megillus Esther. And the plural of the word zmaneim indicates it's zmanim harbe tiknula, that it's not just the 14th, the 15th, there are many other dates which are appropriate for the mitzvah Kriyas HaMegillah. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, I don't have an extra pasuk here for zmaneim, because if you leave out zmaneim, we're going to be in trouble. So I need zmaneim. Don't use it for extra days, because in Cain, because lema krozman. So what are you going to tell me, that zmaneim means only the 14th and the 15th? That's not true, because then it could have said zman, and my zmaneim tuva. So Gemara says, "Vakati mi boile." I needed zmano shel zeh lo kizmano shel zeh. Zmanehem means that there are 2 distinct days on which the Megillah is reading, distinct in the sense that there are different groups. And if you're talking about the Prozim, they read on the 14th, that's their Zman Megillah. If you're talking about they read on the 15th, that's their Zman. So I need the word Zmaneya. Gemara says, no, in Cain lame across Zman Nam. It could have said their times. My Zmanehem, that's already extra. It's telling me all these extra days. So at the end of the day, we really are deriving 3 different halachas. Let's summarize the 3 principles. First of all, bisman, and that would teach us that there are 2 days, and that's the 14th and the 15th. Then bismanam, adding a mem, that teaches us that these 2 days are separate, meaning 2 groups reading on 2 separate days. And Bismanehem tells me that there are additional days above and beyond the 14th and the 15th. Gemara asks the question, the Amos Manim Tuva, why do you limit it to 11? Where'd you get that from? And the Gemara answers, Maneim Dumyut is Manam, Mas Manam Tre, Afs Maneim Tre, which means that we're only going to add 2 days. So we have the 2 days of 14 and 15. Now we have the 12th and 13th. Okay. The Ema Tresar Utlesar. Okay, so then how do you know the 11th? That when the words Maneim is coming to include 2 more days, to expand the Megillah to 2 more days, it can't be telling me Yud Gimel. I know Yud Gimel. I don't need an extra pasuk for Yud Gimel. So if the pasuk is telling me 2 extra days, it's got to be Yud Aleph and Yud Beis. It can't be Yud Gimel. I know Yud Gimel. How do I know Yud Gimel? Because Yud Gimel is man kihilu hakol. This is the time when all the Jews went out to battle to defeat their enemies. That was on the 13th of Adar. And both the Jews in Shushan and the Jews out of Shushan and all the other 127 provinces, they engaged their enemies in battle. And lo tzarich l'rebuye. Therefore, I don't need a pasuk to teach me that they would read the Megillah on the 13th. That's obvious. And Hochanami Yud Gimel Zman Ki Ilu HaKol. So it means that the main miracle took place on the 13th. Obviously, that's an appropriate time to read the Megillah. I don't need a ribui for the 13th, and therefore the extra 2 days that are derived from Zmaneihem are coming to teach me Yud Aleph and Yud Beis. So the Gemara has to be Amos Shitzar B'Shivzar. Maybe it's not earlier days. Maybe Zmaneihem is telling me later days. For example, on the 16th and the 17th. Gemara answers V'lo Yavar Ksiv. The pasuk tells me again in the 9th chapter of Esther. Almost all the psukim we're going to learn in this Masechet, the halachic sugis, are derived from the 9th parak of Esther. There it says V'lo Yavar. V'lo Yavar means that the 14th, 15th, and not beyond. There's no such thing as a Kriyas HaMegillah beyond the 15th. Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani Omar, he has an alternative source for the extra days of the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Omar Kra Bayom Asher Nachu Bahem HaYehudim. And it says Kayom. So Yomim Kayom. By adding the Chaf Adimyon, the pasuk is saying that there are other days that are like the days, meaning 2 other days that parallel or expand beyond the original 2 days of the 14th and 15th. So that gives me the 11th and the 12th, Ramos 11 and 12. How do you know it's not 12 and 13? And once again, Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Yud Gimel, the 13th doesn't need a pasuk because man kihilu hakol. V'lo tzarich rebuye. V'yema shitzar v'shivtzar v'lo yavar ksiv. Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani, my time alo Amar Bizmaneihem. Why is it that Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani felt compelled to introduce an alternative drasha of kayom, yomim kayom? Why wasn't it sufficient for him to derive from Zmaneihem? And where it says man zmanom zmaneihem lo mashma, he doesn't think that that's worthy for drush. Doesn't justify a new drasha and a new ribui of new days, because Zmaneihem, these are their times. It can be read kivshuto shel mikvah. Rav Shaman Shemin Bar Abba, my time longer kayamim. Why does he insist that we derive from his Zmaneihem and he rejects the drush of kayamim? Amalahu Rav Shemin would say ahu lidoros hu dichsiv, that when it says kayamim, that's teaching me that for all generations, the 14th and the 15th of Adar should be Yomim Tovim, like the original days when the Jews would rest from the battle against their enemies. And therefore, the Torah had to say Kayomim to teach me Lidoros. It cannot be free to teach me other days, and therefore I need Zmanayim. Omar Rabba Barachana Rabbi Yochanan, so divrei Rabbi Akiva Stimta. Rabbi Akiva is called Stimta because many of the Mishnayos, that Stam Mishnayos, reflect his Shita. The Dorish Zman Zmanom Zmanei. Aval Chachamim Omrim Ein Korin Osa Ela Bizman. Which means that at this point, the Gemara thinks the Chacham reject Rabbi Akiva, and they hold that there are only 2 days for Kriyas HaMegillah. Only on the 14th and the 15th. There are no other possible days. That's the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says, Beisvei, is that really possible? We have a brisa that says, Rabbi Yehuda, Amos. When do we read on days like the Kfarim, on Makdim and Liyom HaKnisa, like, Beis Gimel, that's only Bisman Chashonim Ketikna. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, and there was a fixed calendar, meaning not necessarily fixed calendar, but everyone knew about the days of the month, and which day of the month would be the 14th and 15th, etc. And during this time, they sent out shluchim to all of Eretz Yisrael. And let's say, for example, if they determined that this day was Rosh Chodesh, the messengers would bring out and send out this information. So they didn't have social media, but they had a way of sending out the information. Aval b'zman hazeh, now the Jews have been spread all over the diaspora. We no longer have a simple method of notifying them which day of the week it is, which day of the month it is, which day was Rosh Chodesh. And we cannot successfully guarantee that without shluch. This is, by the way, the background to the whole institution of Yotification is whole mistakbah. How do they figure out when is Pesach? When do they enjoy from eating chametz? It's a kol mistakbah. They'll calculate 30 days after the day of Kriyas HaMegillah. Is therefore ein kornos of Bizmana. It would be very dangerous if we read Megillah says on a different day in Adar, and then they calculated 30 days. Like if we read the Megillah earlier than the 14th, and they're going to calculate 30 days, they're going to be eating matzah a day early. And not only that, it's more complicated because then they would end Pesach earlier and they'd be eating chametz when it's still Pesach. So the Gemara asks the following question: Rabbi Yehuda Libidman. Can we square Rabbi Yehuda off with any of the shitas, meaning Rabbi Akiva was a chacham? Where does Rabbi Yehuda fit into the constellation? Ilema Libid Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, he believes that the forum will be mocked in Liyom HaKnisa even today. Ella, you have no choice, but I'll leave it to Rabbanim. But then you're telling me that I'll leave it to Rabbanim Bisman Chashanim Kitikuna, when the Mikdash stood and Klal Yisrael were in the land, Yisrael Shriim al Admasam, via Karina, they did allow the Bnei Kfarim to read the Megillah earlier. That's not so. Because, as Rabbi Yochanan told us before, according to the Chachamim, Megillah is only read on the 14th or 15th. And the Gemara bleibt Tufta, the Rabbi Yochanan Tufta. It's a Asha on Rabbi Yochanan. Ika Diamri, now the Gemara has a different lashon of the entire Shakalatariya. Omar Rava Bar Bachana Rabbi Yochanan, so divrei Rabbi Akiva Stimta. That ruling of our Mishnah that you could be maktiv for the Kfarim to Yom HaKnisa, that reflects Shita Rabbi Akiva. Aval Chachamar b'Bizman hazeh Hoel u'mistaklim ba ein kornosa el Bizman. The Chachamim reject Rabbi Akiva Bizman hazeh because of the danger that they'll calculate 30 days from the Kriya. Therefore, we have to set the Kriya up on Yudal. We're not going to allow any earlier days. You're playing with fire. But if it was Shanim Kintikunam, then even the Chacham would agree to Rabbi Akiva that we read the Megillah for the neck for him earlier, and we have extra days. And we have it also in the price. On Rabbi Yehuda Amosai, when do you allow for Makdim Yom HaKnis before the 14th? Vizman Shashanim Ketiknom v'Yisrael Shurim Al Admos. And therefore, they don't have to calculate 30 days after for to determine when it's Pesach. Since we don't have that communication, therefore in Korno Sol Bismano, we're not going to allow. It's kind of a toss-up, but we're not going to play with fire about Pesach and eating chametz for the sake of establishing the kula for the Makdim Yom HaKnisa for the Kfar. So everyone's going to have to read on the 14th and the 15th. Ashi Kashale Rav Yehuda. Rav Ashi has a stira between two statements of Rabbi Yehuda.